Thank you, Pastor Donnie. Appreciate it. How are you guys? Good. Good to see you. Good to be with you this morning. It's March. Can you believe this? I mean, it's close enough, right? That's wild. I've got my daughter coming home from spring break to spend the week with us. I've got 4 kids, and 3 of them are like launched-ish. And so we've only got 1 kid at home, and we're like so lonely with our kids gone. It's quiet in our house. So we've got one of them coming home. We're all excited. So anytime March comes close, we start looking forward to a couple of the kids being in the house. So we're in a teaching series going through the Gospel of John, but kind of doing it differently. Realizing John actually structured his gospel in a very intentional way. What he did was this: he said, I want to pick out 7 moments that Jesus did something. They're miracles, but he goes, I'm not going to call them miracles. I'm not going to call them moments. I'm going to call them signs. And it's very intentional. He said, I'm going to pick these 7 moments. They're miraculous things, but I'm going to call them signs because I want people to, as they see them, realize, you know what a sign does? A sign points beyond itself. And so I want them to see these moments as something that, like, you're going to encounter something in that moment, but it's not about that moment. It's actually pointing to something other than itself. And so each one of these moments, these signs, is sort of a new facet of the same light that shapes how we see who the person of Jesus is. And this sign that we're going to look at today, it's a little different than the others. You know, you think about some of the other signs. We've looked at Jesus turning the water into wine, right? And it causes people to be delighted. We see Jesus feeding the 5,000, that sign, and it causes amazement. We see Jesus walking on the water to the disciples, and man, they're freaked out. It causes kind of anxiety and fear. This one does something different altogether. This one acts like a flare being shot off in the dark. Anyone here ever shot off a flare before? Who's shot off a flare before? Windsor's like one person. Windsor's like an anti-flare place. Like I've shot off a flare. I'm not even. If you haven't shot off a flare, you need to shoot off a flare. It is cool, I'm telling you. Okay, but imagine this. Think about what happens if you're with a number of people and you're in a pitch dark black place. Okay, at nighttime, no moon, no stars. It's dark, and you shoot off a flare up into the sky. What happens around you? All of a sudden, you see where you are, and you see where every other person is as well, right? It reveals not where you claim you are, not where someone says they think they are. It reveals where you actually are. That's what it does. And that's what's going on in this sign that we're going to look at this morning. John chapter 9, Jesus heals one man and a flare goes up. And suddenly everyone is exposed. Like the disciples, they've got some kind of kooky ideas about why people suffer, and that's exposed. And the community, the neighbors of this guy who's healed, their kind of nervousness are exposed. The parents of the man, their fear is exposed. The Pharisees, the religious leaders, their preoccupation with certain ideas are exposed. And not only that, but it also exposes this blind man. And what it reveals is maybe the most beautiful thing in this entire chapter that's going on here. So this sign, it doesn't just heal a man's blind eyes, it reveals who else is blind. And it might be more than we would think. So let's jump into this text, John chapter 9. Jesus initially kind of refuses to answer a question of his disciples. John chapter 9, verses 1 through 3, we read this. He, Jesus, passed by, and he saw a man blind from birth. And his disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, interesting assumption, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? And Jesus answered, it was not this man who sinned or his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed in him. Now, before you're kind of too hard on the disciples are not being cruel, they're being theological. They had a theological framework for suffering. It went something like this. Well, if you're suffering, God must be upset with you. I know a lot of you and I fall into that at times. I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to, and they say things like, things are really struggling. I'm really struggling at work right now. Things aren't going well. What have I done that God's upset with me? You think that I know you do. I have conversations with you. I think that at times because it comes out in a sort of a default, this framework, and I understand it because it's nice and clean, isn't it? It's linear. It's logical. It's a straight line. In fact, it's the exact same framework. Have you heard of a guy named Job before? The book of Job, it's the same framework Job's friends have when Job is suffering, and he's saying, I haven't done anything. And his friends go, well, you must have, because your life isn't going well. And in Job chapter 42, God says, your friends are dead wrong. See, the Bible's explanation for suffering, it never gives a clean equation. 2 + 2 = 4. Here's why. See, the world, it's broken in ways that it's not always traceable to an individual sin when we suffer. The disciples wanted Jesus to walk them into a courtroom so they could assess blame. He walks them into a cathedral. A cathedral is where you encounter mystery and wonder. And Jesus says, neither this man nor his parents sinned. This happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him. That answer of Jesus, it's not a theological treatise of why do bad things happen to good people. It's a missional statement. Jesus is saying, I am not come to explain why suffering happens in each scenario. I'm here to redeem the suffering. Now, notice what Jesus says right before he heals the man, and this is key. Verse 5, we read, he says, I am the light of the world. And this is the second time he said this. The first time was just the chapter before. John chapter 8, verse 12, he said this. Again, Jesus spoke to them saying, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. In fact, this gospel author, John, do you know how he starts his entire book? Like on page 1? He says this, John 1:4, in him, that's Jesus, was life. And that life, it was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. And then now here in John chapter 8 is where this sort of thesis statement becomes more tangible. Jesus is I'm not just going to say it. It's easy to say I'm the light of the world. Show us, what do you mean? Demonstrate that. And he goes and he proves it on a man whose eyes had never once bent light into a single image. Had never once seen the world the way a kaleidoscope sees it. Until Jesus, this is so weird, he takes mud and he wipes it on this blind guy's eyes and he tells him to go wash. So watch next what he does, and don't rush past this because it's key. Part 2, this mud and the spit and the pool thing. John chapter 9, verses 6 and 7. We're told that Jesus, he spits from his mouth onto the ground, onto the dust in the streets of Jerusalem. He makes mud from the dust, and then he wipes it on the eyes of this man born blind. Why does he do that? I mean, Does he have to do it that way? Think about other times Jesus has had encounters. What has he done? Sometimes he's spoken. You're healed, go. Another time a man came and said, come heal my child. And he goes, you're good, go. Just by a thought, he heals him. Why does he do this thing where he takes his spittle and mixes it with dust and makes like clay or mud and then wipes it on his eyes? I would suggest there's something deeply deliberate. Jesus is doing what's called theological messaging when he does this. What's he messaging? Well, how does this whole story, this whole Bible thing, how does it begin? Well, page 2 of like this whole Bible thing, Genesis chapter 2, we read this. Genesis 2:7. Then the Lord God formed the man of what? The man of dust from the ground, and he breathed with his mouth into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living creature, a living nephesh, a living soul. All throughout John's gospel, he keeps like slowly saying with increasing repetition and volume, eventually screaming, this Jesus is the one through whom everything that was made has been made. He's the creator. And then we get to this point, and Jesus takes dust. He spits from his mouth into it so he can make it moldable like clay or mud. And he touches a broken part of creation. This man's eyes. This is a new creation moment. Do you see it? This is a mini Genesis. It's a micro Genesis moment is what Jesus is communicating. The one who formed the first man from the dust of the ground, he's at it again. He's doing it again. Isaiah, the prophet in the Old Testament, knew this same God when he said this in Isaiah 64, verse 8. But now, O Lord, you are our Father. We are the clay. You are the potter. We are all the work of your hand. Or do you remember that guy Job that I brought up earlier? When he was in deep, deep suffering, he sort of made this even more personal in his suffering. He's not terribly unlike this blind guy here sitting by the side of the road. In Job chapter 10, verse 8, he said this, your hands fashioned and made me. He says, and now you have destroyed me altogether. Remember, God, you have made me like clay, and you will return me to dust. Do you see it? Dust, clay, dirt. From Genesis to Isaiah to Job, the biblical writers keep returning to the same image because they keep encountering the same God. It's a God who gets his hands dirty and dirt underneath his fingernails with humanity. And John wants us to feel the same weight because the same hands that shaped Adam in the garden are now pressing mud onto the eyes of this man on the road outside of Jerusalem. And then Jesus says to this guy, go, with this mud on your face, go and wash it off. Go and wash in the pool of Siloam. And then John tells us, just so you don't miss it because it's kind of important, I want you to know what the word Siloam, I want you to know what this pool is called and why it's called that. He says, Siloam, the pool of Siloam means sent, to be sent. This is important. He says, wash in the pool of scent. Why is that? Well, Jesus is saying, go and receive what I, the one the Father has sent into the world, is giving you. The man goes, he is sent to the pool by the one who is sent into this world. And the man goes, and he's not even seeing Jesus. Do you realize that? He just does what the voice in the darkness tells him to do. The very first act of faith in this story. And it happens before the man can see anything. I want us to just kind of sit with that for a moment, okay? He obeys before he understands. He goes to the pool before he even really knows who sent him. Here's the point, I think, for us. I think faith often works as we go. You take one small step toward what, like, you don't fully understand, and sight comes as you move, as you go. I found that in my own life, that oftentimes God calls me to obey, but I have 100 questions. And I use those 100 questions as a way to not obey. How many parents in the room know what I'm talking about? If you're a parent, I've got 4 kids, as I mentioned, especially when my kids were little, and I would say, just trust me. If you do what I say, you'll figure out why it's good. You'll figure out why it's wise. Just obey, and then you'll see. You won't understand why it's the wise path until you do it, right? That's what parenting looks like. That's what being an apprentice of Jesus looks like. He says, obey. I realize you've got 100 questions. You'll figure out why this is the wise path as you obey. As you go, you'll start to see, now I have understanding. Now I go. Sight comes as we go. Part 3 in the story, this man goes, washes this mud off of his face. He can see all of a sudden for the first time in his entire life. And when he comes back, he gets interrogated. John chapter 9, verses 8 through 34. It's a big chunk. This week, read John chapter 9, because we can't read it all. It's just one story, the whole chapter. And as you watch it over these next 26 verses, it's repetition. He gets interrogated, he gets interrogated, he gets interrogated, he gets interrogated 4 times. And the repetition is important because each time he comes out of the interrogation with a new element of sight. Oh, I get it more. I get it more. So the man comes back, and instead of getting like a party, a celebration, he gets a courtroom. And his neighbors are going, is this the same guy? Are we sure? We've known him since he was a child. The Pharisees are saying, hold on, who healed you? Tell me about this guy, this Jesus character. The parents are going, they're kind of nervous, like, we're not sure, talk to him, he's old enough. And the Pharisees are saying, okay, you've been healed, give glory to God, not this Jesus guy, he's a sham. Notice, the religious establishment cannot celebrate Jesus. Here's why. Because it doesn't fit into their narrow theology. Jesus healed on the Sabbath. Okay? There's actually nothing wrong about that in the Old Testament, doing good on the Sabbath. There's nothing wrong about it. But it doesn't fit into their narrow, rigid theology. And so they assume this healing has to be illegitimate. It has to be trick, maybe demonic. Remember, a flare has gone up. And instead of looking at what's illuminating these things, these religious leaders are trying to put out the light of the flare because they've built this narrow, airtight theological system, and this Jesus thing is not fitting within it. Now, how does this intersect with our lives? This is what is called the idol of self-certainty. You have an idol of self-certainty. I have idols of self-certainty. And it doesn't matter if you're religious or irreligious. You have idols of self-certainty. The Pharisees had their kind of system of rules. It's, religious achievements. But you can build the same system out of skepticism or religion. You can have an idol of self-certainty through science or whatever, through your success, through your own story of how God works. It doesn't matter the system or what the system's made of, religious or irreligious. The moment Jesus shows up and he doesn't fit inside your little idol of self-certainty, the instinct is the exact same. It's not to reconsider your system. It's to discredit the movement of Jesus. Because when you're in that scenario, you're not just wrong, it makes you unable to see the very thing that God has put right in front of your face. Let me see if I can sort of give you an illustration. This is a common thing, but it just happened the other week. I was sitting down with a young man, very intelligent, very bright, and he said, I think I believe in God, but I'm struggling. I'm not really seeing him in my life. And I've asked him to show up, okay? And so I'm struggling, and he has this friend who has brought him to have this conversation, brought him to church. We were at our Fort Collins campus. We're in our coffee house, and this Christian friend who follows Jesus brought him. We're having this conversation. He goes, yeah, I've prayed for God to show up and give me some sort of sign that, he's involved and he's connected, and he's just not showing up. And I didn't say this to him outright. I kind of did it in a nice way, but I wanted to say, so let me see if I got this straight. You're sitting in the 1921 coffee house at church with the friend who follows Jesus, who brought you here, and you're talking to a pastor. You sure God didn't send one of us? But do you see, his narrow idol of self-certainty was this big. And he said, God, I want you to give me some direction and guidance. I want you to show up. See, but I didn't fit within that, and his friend who follows Jesus didn't fit with that. His connection with Timberline Church didn't fit into any of that. So God was silent because of his idol of self-certainty. And we all do that. God, I need you to meet some need. And then something that seems very natural happens, and you go, no, God, I need you to meet some need. Are you sure he didn't send that? The Pharisees look at a man who has been blind since birth, and their first instinct is to discredit the healing and the healer. See, the gospel message, it's not our attempt to reach up. My attempt to reach toward God, that's not the gospel. The gospel is God reaching down to me. And that, the gospel, him reaching down to me, that offends every single person who has built their identity on their reach. If your identity is on your reach, you will be offended by the gospel every single time. The Pharisees had built their entire identity on their system of reaching. And Jesus threatened that. He didn't fit within their narrow idol of self-certainty. If you're listening today and you're more like the Pharisees than you would like to admit, not because you're hostile to Jesus and you wouldn't say that, but because your version of him works for you, but you're not terribly comfortable with having a Jesus who's stranger than this, who's bigger than this, who's more demanding than this of you. If that's you, this sign is for you. Meanwhile, watch the man blind. See, the question isn't for us, am I blind? The question is, am I willing to admit? Am I willing to admit that I'm blind? So every time this man in this story, every time he's questioned, because I told you there's like 4 series of interrogations, it's repetition. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's supposed to be repetitious. Each time he gets a little bolder. His sight is growing. He's learning to see. Round 1, he just makes a factual claim. He goes, well, the man Jesus made mud and I can see. Round 2, he has a theological conclusion. He's a prophet. Round 3, he has an undeniable witness about what happened. He says, whether he's a sinner, I don't know. One thing I know, I was blind and now I see. And then the 4th and final round, he's actually recruiting. He goes, do you want to be his disciples too? And they get so mad. He's never met Jesus face to face at this point. Never. All he had is the mud and the pool and his own experience. And he stands his ground against the most religiously powerful people in his community, the people who have the authority to excommunicate him. And that's exactly what they do. It says in the text in verse 34, they threw him out. That doesn't mean they grabbed him by the pants and the shirt collar and threw him out the door. It means they excommunicated him from temple observance. They excommunicated him from synagogue engagement. The Old Testament language for this is he's cut off from his people. That's not a small thing. You're cut off from the covenant people of God. Why does John tell this story? Guess what John's audience is going through right now? These messianic followers of Jesus. They've been cut off. They've been excommunicated from synagogue, from temple. That's why he's writing to them. It's to them. I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to who are Timberliners, it's you, who have said things like, I've lost relationship. I've been excommunicated from relationships in my family, my workplace, friends, long-term friends, because of my commitment to truth, capital T. Because I've been unwilling to yield, I've been unwilling to affirm certain things, I've been unwilling to say, I've been unwilling to bend the knee to falsehood, and I've been excommunicated at certain, I know you have, I know many people who have. This sign is for you. There's nothing new about that. Being committed to truth always gets you excommunicated at some level. It's here in the ancient world, and it's alive and well in our current world. This sign is for you. John chapter 9, verse 35, sort of a fourth movement that kind of changes everything. Jesus hears of the excommunication. He finds out about it. What does he do? He goes and he finds the man who's been excommunicated. And he says this, do you believe in the Son of Man? It's Jesus' favorite self-reference point. Do you believe in the Son of Man? Jesus asks. And the man says, and this is maybe the most sincere, honest moment in the whole gospel. John chapter 9, verse 36 and 37. He answered, and who is he, sir, that I may believe in him? And Jesus said to him, you have, first time ever, seen him. It is he who speaks to you now. The man doesn't play any games. He doesn't pretend to know more than he does. He just says, I want to believe. I want to believe. Tell me who he is. And this is the first time the man has ever looked at the face of his Creator, the face of Jesus. And the first thing he sees is the face of the one who healed him by this mud on his eyes. And he says, Lord, I believe. And he worships him. Think about the whole progression of this chapter. Blind guy, side of the road. He encounters this man in the dark, doesn't know who he is. He follows by one act of obedience. He discovers, I think he's a prophet. Eventually says, I think he's more than that. I think he's the Lord of the universe. And he ends up worshiping him. He goes from sitting by a dark place in the road to bowing down to the Son of the Most High God. This isn't just a healing story. That's the whole point of the sign. It's not just a healing story. It's a conversion of the heart narrative. And then Jesus, in this moment, he delivers sort of the gut punch of the whole passage here. John chapter 9, verse 39. We read, Jesus said, for judgment I have come into the world. The flare's been shot up, remember? For judgment I have come into the world, that those who do not see may see, and those who think they see, they're actually blind. I've exposed them by the flare. And the Pharisees are not dim-witted. They catch the implication really easily. They go, oh, so we're blind? Are we? Jesus' response, John 9:41, well, if you were, meaning if you recognized it, you wouldn't be guilty because you would recognize, I'm blind, I can't see. But now that you say, I'm good, I can see just fine, you are guilty. Your guilt remains. You guys, here's the big idea of this whole passage. Spiritual blindness and physical blindness have completely switched places by the end of the story. Do you see that? They've completely switched places. The man who no one thought could see at the beginning, how does he end? He has stunning clarity of who Jesus is. The men who were sure they could see everything at the beginning, where are they at the end? Blind to the person of Jesus. Utterly blind. The question John, the gospel writer, leaves to you, the reader, and me, reader, which kind of person are you? Simple. Are you the one who says, oh, I know exactly how God works. It looks like this. This is how God works. And if Jesus is doing something otherwise, it doesn't fit. Or are you the one who says, man, I don't understand everything. I don't get it all. I don't know everything, but I know he's doing things for me. I know he's showing up, and I believe. Think again about a sign. This is an image here on the screens. No words on the sign, but I have a feeling you know what it means. What does this sign mean with no words? What does it mean? Bends on the road, curvy road, curves ahead, whatever you might see. See, this sign has one job. One job. It points beyond itself to something more real than itself. See the road right past it? That's what it's pointing to. If you were to pull off the side of the road and stare at that sign, you've missed the point. It wouldn't be doing its job. The only job is to send you past the sign to what the sign is pointing to. That's why John calls these 7 miracles signs. Every single one of these points past itself to, guess what? The face of Jesus. And John told us exactly why he wrote these 7 signs down. At the very end of his gospel, the very, very end, John chapter 20, verse 30, he writes this. He says, now Jesus did many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book, but these 7, these are written. Why? So that you may believe. You may see what the signs are pointing to. You may believe Jesus, he's the Christ. He's the Son of the Most High God. And that by believing, you may have life in his name. And watch what happens to this man. Lord, I believe. And he worships him. The sign is finished. He has arrived at what it was pointing to all along. This message we entitled, Learning to See. Sight in this passage, it's not something that you can earn. You can't earn sight. You can't figure it out by your own intelligence and creativity. It's given. It's given. Sight is given. The man just went where Jesus told him to go, and he came back able to see. See, obedience always comes before understanding. The pool is always called sent. And we go to the one who was sent into this world, and we receive what we couldn't give ourselves. In a few moments, we're gonna follow the same road, because the bread and the cup, they're signs. They're signs. They're pointing somewhere beyond themselves. And this table that we as followers of Jesus, or exploring just, or wanting to see, as we're trying to see, learning to see, this table is for people who are still learning to see. You do not have to have it all figured out to come to this table. You just have to be willing, like this blind guy here, to say, tell me who he is, so I may believe in him. The bread and the cup are Jesus saying, here I am. You have seen him now. If you picked up a cup, I'm going to invite you to hold it. If you didn't, hold up your hand, because my friend Brandon just wants to bring you one. If you would like to, there's a couple people back here. Anyone else who didn't pick up the communion elements on their way in, please raise your hand. And my friend Brandon will get you one. Thank you, Brandon, for doing that. I appreciate it. This is the sign. Would you please stand with me? Six final words before we take this. You're standing at the pool now. The Apostle Paul wrote, "For I received from the Lord what I also delivered to you, that the Lord Jesus, on the night when he was betrayed, he took bread. And when he had given thanks, he broke it. And he said, this, the sign, this is my body. It's for you. Do this in remembrance of me." Let's take the bread, the body of Christ. In the same way, he also took the cup after supper, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this as often as you drink it in remembrance of me." Let's take the cup, the blood of Christ. "For as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes." We don't see his face, not yet, one day, until he comes, right? We don't see his face, but you know what we know? We know his name.